Because I can control it. So what we do is we build our lives on shaky foundations. So I want to ask you this afternoon, what are you standing on? What are you standing on? In our first session, we just talked about who we are. We talked about the unhealthy definitions. And some of you are, if you've never walked in here, you would have been okay with resuming your life with those undealt with things and making decisions based on broken identities, broken stuff, you know? So what have you been standing on? That's a question. What have you been standing on? Because you're standing, it's almost like, you have these blocks and you're standing on, like I'm standing on these blocks, but is this foundation enough to hold me? I lost 100 pounds, but I'm still a big dude. After a while, this is going to become painful. After a while, my feet don't hurt. Because the thing about a foundation, anybody know anything about building houses? I don't until I Googled it last night. When you are building a house is built upon a what? Foundation. Did you know that Google taught me last night that every house that's built has a different type of foundation. Houses have typically 3 different types of foundation. You have the slab foundation, you got like a duct foundation where you can kind of slide in there, and you got what is it?
Crawl space.
Crawl space, there we go. And then you have a basement foundation. So my question is, how did you determine which type of foundation the house gets? And you know what? I have to read this to you. See, I'm falling off this foundation already. As soon as I'm trying to do something else, falling off. Let's deal with this. What is a foundation? A foundation is the lowest support of a structure. The lowest support of a structure. And the fundamental assumptions from which something is begun or developed or calculated or explained. Say it again. From which something is begun or developed or calculated or explained. Your foundation should have the depth, strength, and capacity to carry the weight of your life. Your foundation should have the depth, the strength, and the capacity to carry the weight of your life. And every house that is built on a foundation, but not every house is built on the same foundation. The foundation type is based on several factors of the house design. The geographical location, the climate, the soil and moisture conditions, and the project budget. Right? Foundations, of course, need to be strong enough to support the load of the house. And my question is, you as a house, I want you to think of yourself as a house. Is the foundation that you are standing on, that you built your life upon? Some of us have children, we got wives, we got responsibilities. And you keep adding weight into the house. Is your foundation strong enough to hold your load? Because you know what happens to a foundation that has weight on it, but does not have the capacity to carry that weight? What happens to it? It cracks, or it begins to lean, or it begins to slope. And what happens to a house that is built on a cracked foundation? Eventually, it can fall. So y'all, we've been standing on foundations and hoping, just adding more stuff. And sometimes it's not us adding stuff. Sometimes life adds more stuff. More responsibilities, more of this, more of that. And we're trying to balance the weight on an unsure foundation, and eventually it's going to hurt you or it's going to crack. So what have you been standing on? What have you built your life off of? Guess what? It's about to crack. Most of y'all look at and this is what you got, and I'm not coming at y'all, but I'm going to help all of us. This is what you did when y'all first walked in, and I said, hey, write how you feel about yourself. You know what you did? You did what I would imagine a woman doing when you walk into their house. Look at my curtains. Look at my couches. Y'all see that painting on the wall? Y'all see that 70-inch screen TV? We look at all this pretty stuff. But what happens if that foundation cracks? It don't matter how big your TV is. It don't matter what type of curtains you got. It don't matter what kind of bedding you have, what expensive, nice things you have in your house. What happens? It can all potentially topple over. And so what we need to do as brothers, as men, I want you to look at your life, and I want you to look at your foundation, and I want you to begin to build a foundation in your life that has the capacity to hold your weight. Because feelings of insignificance don't have the capacity to hold you. Trauma doesn't have the capacity to hold you by yourself. And so you're standing on things that will eventually crack. You're standing on things that will break. Right? So now, I got a bigger platform to stand on. But what did it require of me to do? Work. The first thing I had to do was to acknowledge that my platform did not have the capacity to hold me. That's number one. And that takes humility. Because once we achieve things, once we got the degrees, once we got the wife, once we got the car, once we got the house, and we have all these existential things, and we're playing a juggling act trying to hold it all up, we don't want to go back to the foundation. Because it requires question, bro. What work do you need to do in your life today? You got all the nice stuff, but how do you treat your family? How do you treat your children? How do you treat the people who you love or who you say you love? How do people interact with you? What do people say about you? Marketing is what you say you are or who you say you are. You have marketing, but then you also have reputation. Reputation is what other people say you are. So does who you say you are and who other people perceive you to be doesn't line up. For some, maybe. For others, maybe not. So what or where do you have to go? What do you have to do? What type of work do you have to put in to make sure that you're not standing on a faulty foundation? I didn't say you laid this foundation. Many of us are standing on faulty foundations that were created for us. Your daddy created that foundation. Your mama created that foundation. And expected you to stand on it. But the thing is about being a man, and after all the trauma, all the stuff that we may experience, or all the stuff that we internalize, we can't stop or we can't dictate about what happens to us in our lives. But and it's not our responsibility. But our responsibility, what we are responsible for, is what we do with what we've been handed. You didn't cause the pain. You didn't cause the trauma. You didn't even lay the foundation. But it is your responsibility to build your life. And if it is your responsibility, that means you have to do the work in order to be sure that you're standing on a firm foundation. So, question. What is some of the work that you have to do? For me, I'll talk about me. When I got married, I was, what most people don't know, that I was highly suicidal when I started dating my wife. I was highly suicidal because I felt like I had been dropped by so many different people that I trusted, that I called dad, that I called this, whatever. And I realized, and after all these years of bitterness and hatred and whatever, I legit would, I lived in an apartment in the lake. And what I would do was, I would keep my door open. Now, I was always a Christian, so I wasn't going to just kill myself. But I would literally sleep with my door open and say, Lord, please let somebody come in and shoot me, kill me, rob me, so it can be over. Cowardice, but that was where I was at. Because I was tired of hurting. I was tired, and sometimes when that inside pain and when you're hurting from the inside and you don't know how to deal with it, that seems like the easiest route. Why was that? Because my foundation was cracked. For me, I had expected all these other people to affirm me, to validate me, to clap for me, to say you were enough, to say you're amazing, to say you're gifted, to say you're strong. And guess what? A lot of the people that I was waiting to do that for me didn't ever experience it in their own lives and didn't have the capacity to help me build my foundation because theirs was cracked as well. Now, that's my story. Now, the men in your life that I just apologized for, guess what? They didn't have the capacity to help you. They didn't have the capacity to make sure you were good. I'm 30 years of age now, and my mother lied to me for 27 years of my life who my father was. I found out who my father was and found out she said he was dead. He was still alive. And to this day, from that day I found out at 25 to this day, he wants nothing to do with me. Because I was the result of an affair that he had with a preacher's wife. So now I'm standing on that foundation. I was standing on that foundation. And the truth is, rebuilding the foundation is not the glorious work. It's not something somebody's going to praise you for. It's not something somebody's going to pat you on the back for. Half of the time, it's the stuff that people don't even see. People don't walk up to your house and say, bro, you got a good foundation. They look at the bells and the whistles. It's the unglorified work. But what are you standing on? And what do you need to build? What do you need to address? I want y'all to be open, transparent in the room. What do you need to build? What do you need to work on? My foundation, I'll talk about me for a little bit more. Because of my experiences with sexual trauma, because of my experiences with brokenness and rejection, somebody said, number one, it taught me how to keep secrets. So I'm going to protect me at all costs. How did that show up in my life? I became a liar. Like, I didn't even have to think of it. I'm talking about good one, like, y'all, come on, man. I'm the only liar in here. Like, I could, boy, you ask me a question, spit them out, and then my lie got a lie. And my lie, I know how to make them things make sense. Until I married my wife, and then, yeah, it fell through. But it made me a liar. It made me a habitual liar. What else did it do? It made me secretive. Where are you going? Why you want to know?
Right.
What are you thinking? Why should I tell you? And since, if we're being honest, this is just how this stuff has showed up in my life. How else did it show up in my life? Being rejected. So whenever I would mentor people, or I would let people get close, if I saw that they were about to reject me, or I perceived rejection, I would push them away before they could push me away. And this is the stuff and the practices that I would do because I was trying to help or preserve me. Because I didn't want them to know that my foundation not only was about to crack, but it already was cracking. It was only a matter of time before I fell through the floor. Question. We all believers in here for the most part. What do you do when God allows your foundation to crack? What do you do when all that you have built your life upon, God permits it to all fall apart? And some of you have been in those places where you have lost everything. Maybe it was divorce. Maybe it was relationship. Maybe it was whatever it looked. Maybe it was losing a job. Maybe it was just losing relationship with your kids. What do you do when your whole life just falls apart? Who are you then?